This is Steve Shaw, Secretary Rules Editor for NCAA Football. Today we're going to look at the 2019 football rule changes, and we're also going to have some accompanying video that will illustrate those changes for you for the upcoming season. As a reminder, we have a 2-year rules cycle, and 2019 is an off year, and the changes that we're going to talk about today are really all around player health and safety, which is allowed in the off year. Now, we've had really good input from not only our commissioners, coordinators, which really bubbled up through officiating, and our coaches have had input, and obviously our competition committee has had strong input. And so with Playing Rules Oversight Panel approving these rule changes are final for our season. Probably the most talked about change is around targeting in our instant replay review. Now, for a player to be disqualified and the targeting foul enforced, all elements of targeting must be confirmed by the instant replay official. So really, we're taking away the option for a stands for our replay official. If they cannot confirm each component, then they'll overturn the call. Now, as we look at the elements of targeting, you're going to see we have two flavors, as we know, 913, which is targeting with the crown of the helmet. There are two components that replay would have to review, as you can see here, and both of those components would have to be confirmed. Same thing on 914, targeting a defenseless player. We have three components, as you can see, and all three of these components must be confirmed for the player to be disqualified. And as we talk about the indicators of targeting, I want to highlight a couple of words here. So targeting means that a player takes aim at an opponent for purposes of attacking, and that's the key word here, attacking with forcible contact that goes beyond making a legal tackle, legal block, or playing the ball. Targeting indicators are listed here, but they're not limited to only these, but these are the ones that we'll evaluate most of the time. Clearly a launch, we're pretty familiar there. The second, a crouch followed by an upward and forward thrust to attack, and if you see the word attack in each of these, leading with the helmet, shoulder, forearm, fist, or hand, elbow to attack with forcible contact, and simply lowering the head before attacking by initiating forcible contact with the crown of the helmet are all indicators. So let's look at some plays. So this first play we're going to look at, you're going to see a hit by a defensive back on a runner. So clearly this is not a 914 situation, but what you're going to see is the tackler lowers his head and then makes forcible contact with the crown of the helmet. So if you're in the replay booth, you're looking at this. Does the player take aim at the opponent, attacking with forcible contact with the crown of the helmet? Yes. Is there an indicator? Yes. Lowering the head and leading with the head, clearly an indicator. So both of the components are here, so we would confirm this call. Now, this next play is a great illustration of the rule change. So here is a situation where we get a flag on the field for a targeting of a defenseless player. Now, a point of note here is that we are not going to change how we're calling on the field. When in question, it's a foul. But what we're going to see from the video here, clearly the contact is against a defenseless opponent, so we have that. And there is forcible contact to the head or neck area, so we have that. But the question is there an indicator? And as you can see, this player is really playing the ball. There's no indicator here. He's just running through the opponent, playing the ball, and their helmet's hit. So here is one you could not confirm an indicator, so we would overturn this call based on this new rule. Now this next play, again, here's a hit on a defenseless receiver. So as replay goes in to look at it, first, do we have a defenseless player? No question about that. Second, is there an indicator? Clearly, this is as big an indicator. I mean, it's a launch, but when you go in and look, is there forcible contact into the head or neck area? And I think you would clearly agree that you could not confirm that. In fact, there really isn't forcible contact into the head or neck. And so here would be a play that we would overturn and not have a targeting foul. Now this next play we're going to look at is a 9-1-3 or crown of the helmet hit. And important to note that helmets don't have to collide for targeting. And here's a situation where there's a call on the field for targeting with the crown of the helmet. And if your replay, you go in and look, is there forcible contact with the crown of the helmet? No question. It goes right into the chest of the defenseless player. He's a passer. But it's a crown of the helmet hit, and the indicator is simply lowering the head to attack the opponent. So this would be one that replay would confirm as a targeting foul. The other change in targeting is now there is a progressive penalty. So if a player receives a third targeting foul within a season, then the player is not only disqualified for that game, but also will receive a one-game suspension for the team's next scheduled game. And this would carry over into a championship game, a bowl game, or even could carry over into the next season if that player has eligibility remaining. Now, any game that has instant replay, as we know, the instant replay review decision is final and there's no appeal. But for games in which instant replay is not used, there's still the opportunity, if a player gets that third targeting foul, to consult with the national coordinator for a video review to make sure that it was a targeting foul. Another player safety change is in our overtime rule. So we are not changing anything in the first 4 periods of overtime. The change will come if after 4 overtimes the score is still tied, then beginning with the 5th extra period, each team will move directly to a 2-point try. So all the components will be the same. Whoever's choice it is can choose offense, defense first, or the end of the field. The other team, has the remaining selection. But we will go directly to a 2-point play. If there was a carryover of a penalty, it'll be enforced from the 3-yard line. But the intent of this is that after 4 overtimes, the number of plays have grown to the number where we need to get the players off the field. So this should be a way to end the game without extending it with too many extra plays. And also note that in the absence of media timeouts between the periods, after the 2nd and 4th extra period, we're going to have a 2-minute mandatory break period for the players to rest. Now, one of our most talked about changes is the illegal wedge formation on free kicks. So as we know, there's no change in the definition. The wedge is defined as 2 or more players aligned shoulder to shoulder within 2 yards of each other. Really, the change here is now on free kicks, after the ball has been kicked, it's illegal for 2 or more members of the receiving team. Before it was 3, now it is 2 members of the receiving team to form a wedge for the purposes of blocking for the ball carrier. Now, a couple points of note is that there doesn't have to be contact. It's a live ball foul, whether or not there's contact. But there is no foul if the kick is from an obvious onside kick formation or if the kick results in a touchback, a free kick out of bounds, or a fair catch situation. So let's look at a few plays to illustrate this rule change. On this play, what we're going to see is both a wedge formation in the front end and back end of the formation. So starting on the back end right at the -45, we're going to see 2 players come together shoulder to shoulder, and that creates a wedge formation. That is a foul. But also in the front end of the formation, you're going to see 2 players drop back, and at the +45, they come together shoulder to shoulder to block, and both of these would be considered a foul under our new rule. This next play, we're going to see in the back end of the formation, a formation of a wedge. Now, this is a touchback play, and so there's no foul here, but you could see these players coming together in the back end. But I really want to use this to illustrate a block on the front end. You're going to see right at the -40, there's a double team block, and this is done legally. The 2 players never form a wedge. They never come together shoulder to shoulder, but they both together block this player. So this is not a foul. So this is a proper way to do a double team block. Now this next play, the back end of the formation, again, very clean. No foul for a wedge. But if you go back to the front end At the -30, you're going to see two players come together shoulder to shoulder to actually block for the ball carrier, and that would be an illegal wedge formation. So that would be a foul in our new rule. Another player safety change this year is around blindside blocks. And so now we have a definition of a blindside block, and it's an open field block against an opponent that's initiated from outside the opponent's field of vision or otherwise in such a manner that the opponent cannot reasonably defend himself against the block. And the rule now says that no player shall deliver a blindside block by attacking an opponent with forcible contact. The coaches on the committee wanted to leave it as a block that was attacking an opponent with forcible contact and not dictate how a block had to be made. It will be legal if a player delivers a blindside block with extended hands or receives or absorbs the player almost in a screen-like fashion, or there are a number of other techniques that would be allowed. We're letting the coaches teach the players how to make a block, but it's a foul if they attack an opponent with forcible contact. Now, one point of note as we work through this, it is a personal foul, 15-yard penalty, but we did not create a new signal for this. So referees, when you announce it, you'll give the personal foul signal and basically announce it as personal foul blindside block without an additional signal. And one final point of note as we get into some video plays, if this action of a blindside block also meets the elements of targeting, it is a blindside block with targeting, and we'll have an illustration of that. On this first play, you're actually going to see two blindside blocks in the middle of the field where legal last year, these both would be delivered with forcible contact, and both of these would be fouls for blindside blocks. Now, just as a contrast, we're going to illustrate a situation where a player just actually screens and blocks. He actually blocks two players in this situation, but obviously this would not be a foul for a blindside block. This is done properly under the new rule. As we talk about any blindside block in the open field where we're attacking an opponent with forcible contact is a foul. Here you're going to see a receiver actually going back in toward the ball, blindside the defender with forcible contact. This would be a foul. And then finally, here's a play that is clearly a blindside block, but it is a blindside block with targeting. As you're going to see from the end zone view, the player delivers forcible contact to the head or neck area. And we know if a player's receiving a blindside block, he's a defenseless player. So back to our replay view, here's a situation, defenseless player, forcible contact to the head or neck area, and an indicator there. So this would be confirmed as a blindside block with targeting. A couple of final changes worth noting. The first is blocking below the waist for Team B. When Team B is allowed to block below the waist by rule, now the block must be directed from the front. This has always been a requirement for Team A, but it had never been a requirement for Team B. So now if Team B is allowed to block below the waist, and we know that they're allowed to 5 yards beyond and behind the line of scrimmage, when they make their block, it must be directed from the front to be legal. And the final change is supervision of officiating crews. And this is a change that will actually take place in 2020. But now officiating crews, which will include the instant replay officials, will be assigned from the same officiating organization. So no more split situations where a crew on the field from one conference and a crew in the booth from another conference. All will be assigned from the same conference. So that's our rule changes for the 2019 season. And I want to wish you and your crew the best of luck as you prepare for our season.